Keir Starmer's Chagos Islands deal has sparked outrage, not just in the UK, but across the Atlantic, where Donald Trump's allies are calling for the plan to be torn apart before it's too late. The deal, which would hand over sovereignty of the islands to Mauritius, is being described as a ticking time bomb for US national security, with fears that Iran and China could use the agreement to spy on the strategically crucial Diego Garcia military base. Before we dive into the full story, check out this fiery clip of GB News presenter Nana Akua delivering her take on Labour's reckless gamble.
The Chagos deal is falling apart as we speak. Our Foreign Secretary David Lammy has no power. What is it he called Trump, a neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath? So David should be OK with this quip from Lee Anderson, which is mild in comparison.
We've got over 6,000 villages in the United Kingdom. And if you took the village idiot from every village, right, and put them 6,000 village idiots into Tottenham, David Lammy would still be the village idiot.
Now, whilst Trump may have forgiven David, Trump could wind up being his worst nightmare. The Chagos deal was started by the Conservatives. They were useless too. Now being hurried through by Sir Keir Starmer and co, or so they thought, has hit a bump in the road. Enter Donald Trump. Chagos is used by the US government as a military base for its Navy ships and long-range
Labour's plan to surrender
aircraft.
the Chagos Islands is being sold as a way to comply with international law and secure Diego Garcia's future through a 100-year lease agreement. But critics on both sides of the Atlantic are branding it a diplomatic disaster. The stakes: Diego Garcia isn't just any military base, it's a linchpin of Western security in the Indian Ocean, housing vital US military operations. And now, with Mauritius growing closer to Iran and China, fears of espionage are skyrocketing. Mauritius has recently held discussions with Iran about hosting academic exchanges, raising alarms among Western intelligence agencies. These exchanges might sound harmless, but according to MI6, they're often used as covers for espionage. Former MI6 chief Sir Richard Dearlove has called the situation appalling, warning that Labour's deal could open the door for adversaries to gain critical intelligence on US operations. On Friday, Iran's ambassador to Mauritius met with government officials to discuss collaboration, including a potential agreement to establish Iranian universities in the region. This may seem unrelated to the Chagos deal, but for intelligence agencies, it's a red flag. Iran has a history of using academic exchanges for spying, most notably in Germany, Sweden, and even the US. If the Chagos Islands fall into Mauritian hands, many believe that Tehran's influence will follow close behind, jeopardizing Western security efforts in the region. Adding fuel to the fire is Mauritius's deepening ties with China. Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative has already extended its influence over the small island nation, with significant investments in infrastructure and development. The concern among US Republicans is that if Mauritius gains control of the Chagos Islands, China will exploit its relationship to gain strategic access to Diego Garcia. Top Republicans, including Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, aren't holding back their anger at Starmer's plan. Writing in The Telegraph, Kennedy lambasted Labour for striking deals behind America's back, declaring, "Friends don't strike deals behind each other's backs, especially when our shared security is on the line." His frustration is echoed by Jim Risch, the Republican chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, who directly called on Trump to veto the deal as soon as he's back in the White House. Trump's allies aren't just speaking out, they're mobilizing. According to sources close to the former president, he is preparing to block the Chagos agreement in his first week back in office. One insider described a sense of betrayal within Trump's camp, accusing Starmer of trying to rush the deal through before President Biden leaves office. This move, they argue, is an attempt to tie Trump's hands while placating Labour's left-leaning base. Boris Johnson, a known ally of Trump, has also been lobbying US Republicans against the deal. The former Prime Minister reportedly warned GOP leaders that Labour's plan risks pulling the UK further away from its closest ally, while opening the door for adversaries like China and Iran to gain a foothold in the region. Kennedy's op-ed wasn't just a critique, it was a stark warning. If Mauritius is growing its friendships with China and Iran, how can we expect it to keep our adversaries' spies away from our base, he wrote. His fears are shared by many within Trump's circle, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio and tech magnate Elon Musk, who is said to be privately opposed to the deal. Starmer, however, insists the agreement is the only way to comply with international law and protect Diego Garcia's long-term security. In 2021, the International Court of Justice ruled that the UK's continued control over the islands was illegal, advising that they should be returned to Mauritius. Labour is framing the deal as a necessary step toward justice, international compliance and stability. Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy has defended the agreement, arguing that the 100-year leaseback arrangement ensures the US will retain maintain control of Diego Garcia for generations to come. But critics say this is nothing more than a short-term solution with long-term consequences. Former MI6 head Sir Richard Dearlove was blunt in his assessment, saying, "It immediately raises alarm bells. I would have thought, as far as the White House is concerned, that it will persuade them not to sign the deal off. It's appalling." The situation grows more tangled when you consider the broader geopolitical context. Iran's influence in Mauritius, combined with China's Belt and Road investments, suggests a coordinated effort to chip away at Western dominance in the Indian Ocean. Diego Garcia is one of the most strategically important military bases in the world, and losing control, or even compromising its security, would deal a significant blow to US and UK interests. And it's not just politicians who are worried. Security experts have pointed out that once the islands are handed over, there's no going back. If Mauritius decides to align itself more closely with China or Iran, the West will have little recourse to protect its interests. The 100-year lease agreement Labour is banking on could quickly become irrelevant if Mauritius refuses to honour it, especially under pressure from Beijing or Tehran. Meanwhile, Nana Akua of GB News has been leading the charge against Labour's proposal in the media, calling it reckless appeasement dressed up as diplomacy. She's not alone. Opinion polls suggest that public sentiment in the UK is heavily against surrendering the islands, especially given the potential security risks. Starmer's decision to push forward with the deal has also raised questions about his leadership. Critics argue that he's prioritising international law over the special relationship with the US, a cornerstone of UK foreign policy. If Trump vetoes the deal, it could spark a diplomatic crisis between the two nations, further complicating an already delicate situation. And yet, Labour remains steadfast. Their argument is simple. Complying with international law is non-negotiable, and the leaseback agreement ensures that Diego Garcia remains secure. But for many, that isn't enough. The risks of espionage, combined with Mauritius's ties to China and Iran, make this a gamble that could backfire spectacularly. Trump's decision, expected next week, will be a defining moment. If he blocks the deal, it will be a major setback for Starmer and could further strain UK-US relations. But if the deal goes ahead, the consequences could reverberate for decades, reshaping the balance of power in the Indian Ocean and beyond. This isn't just a story about islands, it's about trust, security, and the shifting alliances that define our world today. As the clock ticks down, one thing is certain: the Chagos Islands are at the center of a geopolitical showdown that could change everything.